Okay, we're back. We got cut off there. Yeah, we were saying I'm really curious to hear your perspective on the bigger issue, because I find part of the problem is people are focused on all these smaller things happening, which are still big things. You know, COVID and wearing masks and mental health issues rising and Black Lives Matters and all these other things happening, the election, Trump, the Democrats, Republicans, so many things happening. And it's all these distractions. They're all important, but they're all
Hmm.
kind of tied into a bigger picture. So I'm curious if you can explain that, because I don't, we've talked about this, and I don't believe your perspective is completely unique or mine. A lot of people are sharing this. It's not hitting the mainstream news. You see some people coming out with some of the shows that we've talked about, and even just to mention a few for people early on here, because they can go look through some of this themselves. They can look up shows like The High Wire with Del Bigtree. They can
Hmm.
look up stuff like, for more mainstream news, go look at the Epic Times. I'm not saying I align with everything they're saying, but they're better than CBC and NBC and ABC and whatnot.
Hmm.
To go look at maybe Edge of Wonder, some of the interesting stuff they're putting out. Some is way out there, some is very interesting. um, Dr. Buttar, is that how you say his name?
Hmm.
He's
Yep.
coming out with some really interesting stuff. So do you want to say a few names that people can look up on YouTube channels so they can start digging around themselves?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of people out there that are, advocating for the truth, and that's, going back to that sort of unifying perspective. And we're all going to have our sort of unique kind of look at things, and we might get information wrong, but the way that I kind of boil it down is I look at people's intentions. Is their intention pure?
Mhm.
Can I verify that their intention is they're putting out what they see as the truth, or is there some sign of manipulation going
And
on?
some sort of self-serving component to it. Yeah.
Exactly. So people that I've found to have seemingly good intentions in what they're putting out there might not necessarily agree with every word that they say.
Mhm.
But I love the X-22 report. I think Dave
Mhm.
does a fantastic job at putting out, the world is how he sees it.
Yeah, you
SGT,
introduced that one to me, actually. I didn't even know
mm,
about that.
yeah, and a similar one, SGT report is another fantastic one as well. He does very good interviews that are very relevant, very on topic, kind of
SUT?
SGT report.
SGT report. Okay, I haven't looked at that.
Yeah, he's great as well. And then there's Robert David Steele is a fantastic truth seeker as well. He's a former CIA spy, and he has very relevant interviews and goes over kind of the world as how he sees it and from his
Hmm.
perspective and his experience.
Yeah, look a
Um,
couple up here while you're talking about yours.
sure, yeah. I mean, you mentioned the Edge of Wonder. I think those guys are great.
And I love the humor they bring in. Like these are difficult topics, and these guys are
Right,
always laughing. And I mean, we've got to be light still. We've got to be the lighthouses in the darkness. So I
right.
think there's a balance there as well of these are difficult topics, but we need to be uplifting the energy and feeling that high vibe sort of stuff that people are seeking right now.
Right. I think Jim Fetzer and the Real Deal Report. I think those guys are fantastic. Jim Fetzer, he's an American professor on critical thinking and research, and so he takes
Hmm.
that approach in everything. But he doesn't shy away from any particular topic just because it's taboo or quote
Hmm.
unquote conspiracy theory. But he really goes into all of it and portrays how he sees based on the data that he has.
Hmm.
Um, there's a channel called the Kate Awakening. Kate does a fantastic job at just breaking down the news, how she sees it, and
Okay.
putting forward what she sees as relevant. And I like
I've
her
heard of
because
her, but I haven't followed that. I didn't know if she was more on the spiritual side or she was more on the information side.
she's more on the information side for sure, but she she
Okay.
she dives into some spiritual aspects as well.
We mentioned Dr. Rashid Buttar.
Yeah, Rashid Buttar, I think he's critically, like, he's acclaimed. He's got a plethora of patient testimonies of how he's just a fantastic doctor in general, but he stepped out and decided that he was going to start speaking the truth and not push
Boy, is
this
he ever.
narrative. And he's very passionate. He's a former military, very passionate about putting out the real and raw information,
Hmm.
regardless of what people view it as or believe in it. Um, so I really enjoy that perspective. I mean, you mentioned the high wire with Del Bigtree. I think
Hmm.
he does a fantastic job. And it's interesting because when you look at people who are speaking the truth, a lot of times it's followed by censorship. It's a lot of times it's followed by this sort of unseen force that is working very diligently to censor and hide information. And Del Bigtree has had his whole YouTube channel deleted
Hmm.
with no warning, no real
And
reasons
he was
why.
interviewing some big names. He was
Hmm.
he was getting a lot of health professionals, frontline doctors coming
Yep,
forward. You know, some of the doctors that were the dozen or so that just the other week, was it last Monday, they were up. I'm not sure where that was that they were doing that,
they
but
were
they were
in
basically
NDC. Yeah.
NDC,
Hmm.
and what they were putting forward, and that was very much watched and then censored.
Yes.
Which, and some of those doctors have, at least one has lost their job because of it.
Yes, yeah, and that's where it gets so, we've got to actually consider motive behind why people would be out there speaking these kind of things,
Hmm.
because the only reception that they get from big tech and the media is ridicule, censorship. People risk their jobs, their
Hmm.
livelihood, all these different things, and it doesn't make sense for people to step out onto that and put themselves
No, why
into
would you
harm's
want to?
way just to make up a
I
fib,
feel that in my profession. I feel that coming forward as a psychologist talking
Right.
about these things. This isn't necessarily my field exactly, but one of the areas I've come forward for is because I kind of specialize in stress reduction.
Hmm.
And when I see the world in so much fear, I mean, look at the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton or some of these people, that these cell biologists that have come forward and look at it through a little more of a spiritual lens too,
Hmm.
that our perception and our reality around us is what puts us into a state of stress or not. That
Right.
perception of our reality affects our brain, which is the relay center,
Right.
and that sends the biochemistry and activates our neurological systems to either be in a state of stress or not stress. And
Hmm.
when that stress kicks in and the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, we're swimming in a sea of biochemistry that is toxic.
Hmm.
And in the research I've seen over the years, right now it's estimated that 60 to 90% of all disease is caused by stress. 60 to 90% of all disease. And you can look that up in the work of Dr. Kabat-Zinn or Dr. Herbert Benson, first one a physiologist, second one a cardiologist. Stress kills.
Hmm.
So it makes you wonder as well, why are they pushing all of this fear and this stress? And yet in Canada, I don't hear any government um, um, members coming forward saying, listen, people, don't get stressed about this, or trying to assist with stress reduction techniques. No,
Right.
it's like they want us to be in a state of fear,
Right.
which is
And
really unfortunate.
it
But
is.
before
And
we go into that, I just want to, one thing,
sure.
because those YouTube channels. So you said the X22 report, because some people are really hungry for where they can go find their own research.
Hmm.
X22 report, um, David Rodriguez came out with some interesting stuff.
Yeah. So Laura Eisenhower and David Rodriguez have been doing a show, Dark to Light,
Oh,
and they do that every Wednesday, and that's been very informative. They get some very informative guests coming and talking about things. David Rodriguez specifically has been, he shifted from his professional boxing career and started to come out and revealing the truth about what he's seen within Hollywood in regards
mm-hmm.
to pedophilia and human trafficking, and so he's committed to finding the truth regardless wherever
Mm-hmm.
it lies.
Edge
Relatively
of
new.
Wonder. Those
Yeah.
guys, I believe, were from they were employed with the Epic Times before, and then branched off into their own show.
Hmm.
So they've been journalists in the field,
Hmm.
and one guy was a camera guy. I think it was Rob that was, or Ben, I forget. But anyways, they've got some really interesting stuff, and their .tv platform, which I've joined, has a lot of other stuff where more people are coming forward. There's America Uncensored,
Hmm.
which has some interesting stuff. They also do the China Uncensored. So he's got some interesting things on there. There's Collective Evolution, which I believe
Hmm.
is out of Toronto, Canada. They've been doing this for years now. Some really awesome stuff there.
Hmm.
On the very spiritual side, reincarnation, how the cosmic plan works, LL Research is my go-to for
Hmm.
spiritual teachings and what people call generally the law of one. It's not getting into any of this disclosure per se, but what it's showing people is what the bigger picture is around us being spiritual beings, manifesting a physical experience around us through our thoughts and through how we act. Um, Suspicious observers. If anyone is interested in climate change or cosmic climate, this guy is, whew, this guy is
He's brilliant.
sharp. I catch 5 to 10% of what he's throwing down when he's doing his reports. And I love the way he pulls up peer-reviewed literature and challenges it and sends emails to these professors and these researchers challenging some of their narratives. He is sharp. And
Hmm.
so anyone curious around climate change, which not long ago, everyone was running around talking about climate change was the end of the world, and everyone was feeling this opening heart to Mother Earth to try and help her. Climate change is now not even talked about. So Suspicious Observers is interesting because there might be a much bigger picture of climate change that people
Hmm.
can look into. Epic Times I mentioned already. If you want some fun stuff, Awakening with JP. Do you ever
Yeah,
watch his stuff?
he's
Oh,
great.
awesome. I mean, it's what a hilarious guy.
Yeah.
And I love how fit the guy is because he's showing like you got to take care of your body too. You know, he's mind for me in my profession, mind, body, spirit, mind,
Hmm.
body, energy. That's what it's all about. Um, what else? A couple more I'll throw out here.
I think
Anyone's for you?
New Earth Project is a fantastic YouTube
Okay.
channel. They constantly have these interviews with super intelligent people that are just dissecting
Is that
what's
Sasha
going on in the
Stone
world.
stuff?
Yeah, Sasha Stone
What's
is one of the
his story? I honestly don't know much about him.
so
Um,
from what I know, and I only started following him since he spoke at Dimensions of Disclosure. But
oh, I didn't
he's
see that one. Okay.
yeah, so he's a former rock star who decided to, that life of materialism was not
Hmm,
in it for him, and he wanted to start um, really just disclosing the hidden aspects of the world. So he's very poetic in how he speaks, but he's extremely intelligent in how he interviews people and
mhm.
his sort of assessment of the world and what's going on.
Okay.
Um, so the New Earth Project is sort of he's one of the founders of that, and then they periodically interview all sorts of different people to
Hmm,
give, like there have been people giving a spiritual perspective, religious perspective on like how the churches have been closed down and how there's been a real war on spirituality throughout this whole
mm,
time period where churches have been selectively targeted and attacked to keep them closed down, whereas big box stores have been allowed to stay open,
mhm.
liquor stores have been allowed to stay open, all these different things, but churches vilified and said they're not
Yeah.
allowed to be because they're places of worship. And then they have, they also have plenty of doctors and scientists come on as well and give
Okay.
their perspective on what's going on in the world. So it's a really
And I
good.
think I think that's a show we'll do at another time, really getting into the spiritual side of things.
Sure.
You know, getting into what's the spiritual picture that's going on. What is this war of dark and light? You even see politicians coming out right now talking about that this is a war
Right.
of evil
Right.
against the light. That's interesting that they're coming out and saying this.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what you said initially about the world's kind of splitting into these two different realities, and we're being
Hmm.
tugged in one direction or another because
Hmm.
it is a spiritual war,
Hmm.
and we're given the opportunity to really choose, and at a certain point, ignorance is not going to be a choice anymore. We're going to
Hmm.
be there's going to be enough put forward to where you really have to align yourself. Am I going to align myself into this fear, manipulation, anger, jealousy, hatred, like all of those sort of negative, what we term as negative in our reality? That's going to be a reality that you can tie into, or are you tying into this sort of unifying, communal, loving,
Hmm.
harmonious? That aspect is gonna reveal
For some
itself
people,
too.
that's just fluffy. For some people, that's just fluffy. And I can
Yeah.
say this because, I didn't say this in the beginning of our talk, but I grew up. I joke when I say this, but I'm serious when I say it with humility. I grew up a racist atheist. I grew up in Northeast Edmonton, below the poverty line. I had a racist father. It was. I could have had better childhoods, but it taught me a lot. And over the years, I mean, I went from being I wouldn't believe in anything unless it was scientific. Even when I was a physiotherapist, unless it was a peer-reviewed randomized control trial, I wasn't going to look at it.
Hmm.
And over the years, I've had my own experiences. I've had my own awakenings, you can say, where you start seeking something bigger. And when you go down those rabbit holes, it's not drinking the Kool-Aid. For some, it might be, for me, it was really a scientific lens looking at this. And I've landed at a place where, to me, it is completely conclusive that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience.
No doubt.
I would even go one step further. Like, that term has been said a lot. I would say we're spiritual beings manifesting a physical experience.
Mm.
And we manifest that through our thoughts. And our
Yes.
thoughts are what we contribute to the field of consciousness around us. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're essentially a source of energy that has chosen to come here to have a physical incarnation. And this is the vehicle I chose. This is my horse. And so we are navigating this experience with this very limited conscious mind. And this is by design. We
Yes.
chose to come here to this really messed up school of hard knocks to see what it's like and to fumble around. And that is beautiful in itself, when you
Mm-hmm.
can realize that there is no good or bad. This is just experience. And so I think we'll do a show talking about that, because for some people, I think they'll look at either you're an atheist or you're religious, which is ridiculous. There's
Right.
so much in the middle. And so I would like to do a show to talk to people and talk about this middle ground. And so people can understand, you know, different ways to look at this and
Right.
how it can actually really enrich your life. As an example, I have zero fear of anything that's happening, because I believe everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want fear to motivate me or manipulate me, because then my consciousness is fueling those consciousnesses, and that's not what I want to do. And of course, we get caught up on this sometimes, but you know, we'll talk about that, I think, in a different show. But I wanted to plant that seed because some people are really hungry to understand that there is something bigger going on. Otherwise, it just looks doom and gloom
Right.
the more that you learn.
It does. And you bring up a good point as far as this. We're constantly fed this dialectic that you have to choose one or the other, white or black.
Yeah.
You know,
Are you left
Christianity
or
or
right?
left or
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Are you
it's
religious or
all,
not? Yeah.
yeah, you're either for or against, and that by design has been implemented to keep people always at each other's throats and divided because
Separateness, separate and
yes,
divide.
right, and it keeps those who are in power who have recognized that that truth that there is no
Yeah.
separation. They're able to sort of manipulate others by keeping them divided in that sort of
Hmm.
mentality, which is, you know, important to remember. And I think just in general, you know, another resource that I've found incredibly useful in discovering what objective truth is and natural law is Mark Passio. I think he's been
Hmm.
fantastic with his breaking down of what natural law is and what objective truth is, and how we can have our beliefs based off of objective truth. But if we
Okay.
don't have that baseline of what objective truth is and what natural law is, and that is, you know, that everything in this universe is built upon a set of principles that are absolutely unwavering, and it's
Almost
this.
archetypical, as the
Yes,
law of one would say. Okay.
absolutely. And
Okay. I'm not familiar with his work, so okay.
yeah, very intelligent person.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's you know, it's we're constantly fed this kind of narrative of keeping people divided.
Okay. This is interesting because we're going off on so many tangents, but
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm happy with this, because what I'm hoping is, um, you know, the people that watch this, we can get some feedback. Oh, you guys talked about this. Can you delve into that? You guys
Hmm.
talked about this. Can you delve into that? But I think something that people are really, really hungry for right now, really hungry for, are current updates of what the heck is really going on.
Hmm.
So some people are talking about this is this is this whole clown show. So much of what we're seeing going on has to do with the upcoming election,
Hmm.
and that they don't want Trump to be in power.
Hmm.
And I'll be the first to say, when Trump got in power, I remember posting something on Facebook where I thought the guy lost his marbles. And I
Hmm.
put this video up there talking about all these psychiatrists and psychologists, because that's my field. And I thought, oh, I got to agree with my peers. And they were all saying that he was, you know, not fit for office. He should be taken out. And I agreed with that. And I was rah, rah, I hate Trump. And then I've gotten these red pills around seeing the narratives that the mainstream media are pushing, which are actually showing that they're lying about what
Hmm.
Trump is saying. And I've seen
Right.
this multiple times now. I won't get into the example, but one is the bleach thing, where they said
Hmm.
Trump was talking about drinking bleach. I happened to watch that actual press conference that he did the day before. And so
Hmm.
when I saw that come out in CBC, which is Canada's mainstream news, I thought, holy crap, CBC is outright lying.
Yep.
And that was a red pill for me, that the media is corrupt.
Right.
And so, yeah, maybe to delve into that a bit.
Sure. Yeah. So a kind of big picture, the reasons behind, it doesn't really make sense from an individual perspective of why all these events happen. But if you do look at it from a larger scale perspective of there is clearly an opposition, there's clearly some sort of war taking place between two opposing forces, and you have to start to identify who's on what side. And
Mhm.
not to play into the dividing tactic that I just mentioned earlier, but we do have to take an honest look at why, the motives behind why certain people act in a certain way, and why the media is constantly attacking Trump's character. They're trying to assassinate his ability to portray to the public what he's actually trying to do. And I'll be the first to admit, I wish he carried himself in a little bit more with a little bit more eloquence, and was easier to, because I think that can be very triggering to people, and I can see
Mhm.
why that's hard for people to wrap around.
And his history of some of the things he said and whatnot. But at the same
Right.
time, people
He-
change. I
Right.
know
He's
I've
not.
changed.
Yeah. He's not a perfect individual, and I think
Yeah.
anyone putting him on a pedestal is also missing the picture here. But when you look at the actions of what he's been helping to sort of dismantle, and what he actually
Hmm.
talks about, he ran on the platform of there is a deep state. There is a deep
Hmm.
state. There's a swamp that I have to drain. There's corruption that's everywhere,
The same
and
one
that's
Kennedy talked about, the same one
right.
Eisenhower talked about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's, and we saw what happened to JFK, and when he spoke about the same sort of things, and um that it's been one of the first times, at least in my life, that a politician has come out, and regardless if I like everything that he says, he's honest. He's actually transparent about what he's talking about.
Hmm.
And the media, who is known to lie about everything, they don't want anyone who's actually honest about it. And it gets deeper than that when you start dissecting what his actions have been towards human trafficking and pedophilia. He's
Hmm.
he's he's been the only president that signed in, I believe now, 4 executive orders that specifically target human traffickers and pedophilia
Hmm.
in ways that no one would have dreamed or thought possible before.
Hmm.
And the response, because of those things, he is a direct threat to this control structure. And I
Hmm.
mentioned human trafficking, pedophilia, and that's often a subject that people view as crazy, but we've seen so
Hmm.
many incidents come out into the news recently with
Hmm.
Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Nexium, Harvey Weinstein, like
Hmm.
yeah, the whole Wayfair scandal, and Pizzagate, and all that kind of stuff. It's it's hard to ignore when the amount of evidence is piling up that there's this hidden world of darkness that's plagued behind the scenes for so long, and so many powerful people are involved with it.
And here's
And
an example that people can look up for that if they want. So I posted this video on Facebook, and
yeah, that's
hopefully it
Edge
doesn't
of
get too
Wonder, and
personal
they
here.
that's Edge of
But
Wonder. They did a great
yeah,
job at breaking down.
so if people look up this video here on Edge of Wonder, and this isn't their .tv, so anybody can watch this. They look up this, and you go to minute 41. Watch minute 41 to 45. Um, you know what? Why don't we just? It's only a couple minutes. How about I do it right now?
So I'm not sure if, unless you've got it specifically set up to record audio, I'm not sure it's going to record this
Oh, it
audio.
won't. Okay, good to know.
At
Well,
least, at
anyways,
least, at least I'm not hearing audio on my end, so
good
I,
to
I
know.
don't, I don't know.
So if people went to Edge of Wonder on YouTube and looked up this one here, look at this photo, you'll find it, and go to minute 41 and watch 41 to 45, you'll see them talk about a producer that came forward of a documentary that was made.
Hmm.
And that documentary exposed a
A
lot of what's
child's
going
voice.
on.
Hmm.
Yeah, is that what it's called?
Yeah, a child's voice. It was pulled
Have you
off.
seen it?
I haven't watched it specifically, but I did watch most of what the executive producer of that.
Yeah. And it was shocking, long story short, it's a documentary exposing a lot of what we just talked about with
Mhm.
child trafficking and whatnot. I don't know if it gets into this theory, because I can't confirm it, this theory around adrenochrome as well. adrenalized blood that's being
Mhm.
used and these satanic cults, which just, I hope it's not true, but so many people are talking about it.
It is true.
And it sure seems like it because so
Mhm.
many people are talking about it.
Yep.
But point being that this video was pulled. It was taken off Amazon. All the links were taken down,
Yeah,
and
I believe Vimeo dropped it as well. At least
interesting.
I wasn't able to pull it up on Vimeo the other
So
day.
this guy's sticking his neck out to say
Mhm.
this was pulled. He's challenging a company like Amazon, and they're trying to get a new platform. Edge of Wonder guys, they said they might try and put it on Edge of Wonder if they want support, but the information's out there, people.
Yep.
So the bigger picture, because I don't want this to focus too much on Trump, because some people might go, I still don't like Trump, and that's not the
Yeah,
point.
and
There's a
you don't
bigger
have to.
picture here.
Right.
And so you take Trump out of this because Trump's a puppet too.
Right.
He's a trumpet, hopefully, for the better side.
Right.
But how do you see this kind of bigger picture playing out?
Yeah, so it's this, we see examples of this sort of darker world starting to be exposed, and the more you look into it, the more you realize that it's been happening for a very, very long time. And the only reason that it's been so successfully kept under wraps is because of the whole cooperation between politics and the media and law enforcement. All of these organizations have, to some extent, like compartmentalized access to this sort of darker truths, but
Mm-hmm.
it's always been kept under wraps in a very systemic way because of the amount of power that's held behind it. But now the fact that we're starting to see this stuff bubbling up is further evidence that those who would seek to expose that, and those who are, to use a term, that those who are working for the light side, those who are wanting to um, move us into that next world where we are working with our higher selves in a
Mm-hmm.
more direct sort of capacity. They're exposing it, but just like anyone who's caught in a lie, who's a pathological liar, they're going to continue to lie about it. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
continue to do anything they possibly can, up to causing real violence, causing real
Yeah.
events that hurt people, to distract from this truth coming out. And
9/11 is a prime example.
right, and
You
and
know,
that's
yeah.
yeah.
I have a friend, Madhava, and I don't think you've met him, but he was an anesthesiologist in the U.S.
Mhm.
and he has quit his profession. He was a professional engineer before he was an anesthesiologist, so pretty smart dude, also very spiritually minded. And he has basically quit his career as an anesthesiologist to because he is one of these architects and engineers for 9/11, for a new investigation. There's over
Mhm.
3,500 of them, and they're saying that this was no question a planned demolition.
Yep.
So I throw that out to people, not to steer sideways, but sometimes people go, "Oh, it can't be that bad. Oh, there can't be a child pedophilia ring going on, and they're drinking children's blood that's adrenalized." I mean, it just sounds too much. It's too big of a red pill. And even
Mhm.
for me, I don't know how much of that is true, but this narrative is just this is hidden narrative. It just keeps coming forward.
Right.
But I think people need to just stop sometimes and look in the mirror and just go, what is the world we live in? Really look at the world we live in. We live in a world where if you're in North America, it ain't that bad. Maybe if you're in a city with rioting and whatnot, it's bad right now. But we live in a world where we don't have to worry about a war happening around the corner. We don't have to worry about bombs coming right now. We don't have to worry about our children being taken and our cities being raped and pillaged by others. But that is happening across the world. There are places in Africa, Yemen, other places. This is happening and has been happening forever.
Mhm.
And they are human beings, and we are part of that system. Whether we think
Right.
we're North Americans or not, our government is aware of these other problems and have chosen not to really step in and find a way to stop it.
Mhm.
And this possibly, and it is talked about that is part of the cycle. This is part of this cycle of child trafficking, and part of that feeds into this system to some
Yes.
degree. But until we can really look in the mirror and go, what if I was born in Africa? What if I was born in Yemen? And what if I was born in the Congo? And my family was torn apart and my children taken. Would it wake you up to say, I need
Yeah.
to step in? The whole COVID situation, how much it stopped down international goods. So how much have we not shipped over to these other countries that need our grain, that need our corn, that need other things because these crops weren't able to get over there. So how much more famine is there, and how many more children are dying?
Hmm.
And like this is a big red pill for people. Like never mind one guy possibly dying because a cop put his knee on his throat. That's horrible. There are children across the world dying from famine, and they're also being taken from their families for child trafficking
Hmm.
all across the world. So anyone that's got a soul has got to wake up to go, this needs to stop.
Right.
And this
Well,
stops with us. We have to
abs-
step up.
absolutely. And I would even say, even if it's not quite as visible in this country, we are our neighbors are afflicted. We have rising poverty rates, rising homelessness rates, and even in this country, even in the U.S. alone, I mean, the an estimate figure is that there are around 800,000 children that go missing every single year,
Yeah.
and that's right under our noses. And so that's the
And
thing
that's
that gets
estimated. I mean, how can you
right.
have accurate numbers?
Right, and that's
Yeah.
the thing that gets so hard to comprehend, and people would rather just bury their heads and ignore it and pretend like
Yeah.
that doesn't happen, and that's what creates that cognitive dissonance of not wanting to accept the reality of the way the world actually is, and would rather pretend it's this idealistic version that makes
It's
it a
not
lot
that
easier to
bad. It's
comprehend.
not that bad.
Right,
It is that bad.
right, and not to like drive it into doom and gloom, because there's a beautiful end of this story, and
There
there's an
is.
absolutely
And
magnificent
we'll
point
talk
that we
about
get to
that
come.
in another show for
Yeah,
sure.
but in order to get to that place where we get to truly step into our true selves, and truly
Yeah.
in that place of uh, you know joy and bliss, we have to confront this darkness. We have to do the shadow work, and that's both internally and externally. We have to confront the real goings on in the world, what's actually happening, and we also have to confront the darkness that we're not really willing to sit with ourselves with as
Hmm.
well. Do that internal shadow work. What am I not acknowledging?
Get
what
your
what
house in
aspects?
order.
Hmm.
Yeah. If your house isn't in order, what are you putting forward?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very very exciting time. It's a very daunting time, very
Mm.
intimidating. It can be
Hmm.
from any perspective that you take at it. But the more, and this is one thing that I want to certainly be an advocate for, is I want my voice to always be, or my presence to always be, a possibility for people to kind of like have an opportunity to speak to somebody about something, to where it's like, it's a sorry, I'm getting a little distracted.
It's not that bad. Your dog isn't that loud.
Um, but it comes from Kali. It comes from more of a, I want to be that beacon of light where people can reach out to and say, hey,
Yeah.
like I'm starting to discover these kind of things, and
Hmm.
starting to really look into it, but I don't know where to go. I don't know what to look, and I don't know
Exactly.
what to
That, and
see.
that's why you and I aligned on this, because that's what we want to do. We both want to be anchors, where I'm hoping people can watch our videos and go, I resonate with these guys.
Hmm.
These guys aren't BSing me. These guys don't have an agenda. Well, I do have an agenda, and my agenda is to get to the truth. I
Hmm.
posted this on Facebook today because I've gotten a couple remarks where people are, "Oh, are you saying this? Or are you saying that?" And um, I do have an agenda. And honestly, my agenda, like I said in the beginning, is that I don't want to have to face my daughter in 10 years and tell her I was too chicken shit to look into this stuff.
Right.
And I have been. I have been for a number of years.
Hmm.
And so I want to, like you, be able to be an anchor for people to say, you know what, these guys are really looking into things. These guys are looking at from the biggest possible angle, which to me is what we'll talk about in another show, which is that we're spiritual beings manifesting a physical experience on earth. And this
Hmm.
is all about this is school. We're in school right now. And in fact, we're if you look at it like a hockey game, I don't know if you play hockey. This is game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals in overtime, and you're on the ice. We're all on the ice. We all came here to be here during this amazing time on earth. And what a time it is. There are people going towards the light, there are people going towards the dark, and there are those that aren't going to be ready. And right now, what we're trying to do is help these people go, do you want to go towards the light? And here's why. Or I can't really help you going that way, but hey, if you want to go that way,
Yeah.
wish you well. There has to be some polarity, I guess, for this to happen.
Yeah.
But what you
But
and I are
choose.
trying to do is to help those in the middle that are just unsure, those that are looking at all these clown shows everywhere. They don't know what to focus on. They don't know what is real. They don't know what is true. They don't know who's steering an agenda or a narrative. We aren't. We aren't.
Right.
And so I don't know if that's maybe a good place to wrap up for today. But
Yeah. I
is
mean,
there any final things that you want to mention before we wrap up?
well, I mean, just to kind of reiterate, you know,
Yeah.
the whole the way that I see it, the way that I see the spiritual journey is this whole opportunity is for us to really choose, like you mentioned. You know, we really need to actively choose, consciously choose, not continue to be steered and
Mm-hmm.
driven. And you know, essentially, as cattle are driven, I don't want to be driven any longer, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to invite as many other people to stop being driven and consciously choose where do you want to go
Mm-hmm.
and where do you
Mm-hmm.
see yourself. But yeah, we've covered a lot of topics today,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure we'll elaborate on some things further, and happy to go into any more detail on any particular aspect. But I think that might give a good, you know, overarching summary of where we're at and what we're going
Mm-hmm.
through.
Yeah. Yeah. And if people want to give comments, whoever watches this, I think we're going to post it on your site, on my site, and I
Hmm.
don't know, maybe throw it on Facebook or something. I'm throwing myself out there. I was in the closet for a long time around being even a spiritually minded person or a spiritually minded psychologist and holding my views because I didn't want to be judged. I'm at the point now where I don't care. You know, this is my authentic self. If you don't like it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not, the
If
message
it,
isn't for you.
yeah,
If it doesn't resonate, it's not for you, and that's
oh,
okay.
it's all about resonance,
Hmm.
100%. And so, if this is something valuable to people, I really ask for people to share, for people to give comments, to ask for topics that they want us to delve into. If they want to see if I can get other people interviewed, I'd like to interview some really interesting people
Hmm.
and see if I can get a whole collage of people on there. I'd like you and I to be the hub, like you and I to have these conversations a lot because we're doing our research from different angles, and I
Hmm.
think our angles come together really nicely. But you know, this is a strength in numbers sort of thing, and that silent majority, that silent minority needs to step up right now
Right.
and say, okay, even if your voice is just giving some feedback, or your voice is sharing something, or your voice is asking for a certain topic for us to delve into, speak your voice. We're all in this together. We're all co-creators. No one is more important than anyone else. The most silent voice out there might have the most power when it finally speaks up. And so I want people to feel empowered in this process. There's no hierarchy here. That's the dark side. We've grown up thinking there's a hierarchy with how many degrees you have, or how much this, or how much wealth or popularity. No, that's the illusion.
Hmm.
And that's the illusion that I think is going to be manifested in this, after this shift in the 4D negative energy of whatever that looks like. But I think those wanting to go to the next grade 4 from grade 3, which we're in right now, and they want to be in this environment of love and understanding together. We need to speak up.
Hmm.
We need to step forward and just let our voices be heard a bit more.
Definitely. Yeah. Well said.
Okay. Well, Justin,
I appreciate it.
hey, thanks for your time, and we'll
Yeah.
connect
Thanks.
soon. Okay.
Cool. Sounds good. I'll talk to you then.
Okay. See ya.